In the evening of 15th of September 2023, Hawk walked into his living room and saw his wife's body, Sarah, sprawled in the room with blood flowing from her body. He stared in shock and choked back his scream and dialed 911. Little did he know that the call would change everything he knew about his wife. Sarah Thompson was born in 1992 in a small town in Texas. Growing up, she was a bright and ambitious student, always striving to excel. She was a star athlete in high school, earning a scholarship to the University of Texas at Austin, where she studied marketing and graduated with honors in 2014. After college, Sarah landed a job at a prestigious marketing firm in New York City, where she quickly made a name for herself as a rising star in the industry. In 2016, Sarah's life took a dramatic turn when she met Captain Hawk, a Marine officer on active duty. Hawk, whose real name was Ethan Hawkins Wilson, had always been driven to serve his country. He enlisted in the military at the age of 18, eager to make a difference. He quickly rose through the ranks, earning commendations for his bravery and leadership skills. During his time in the military, Hawk served multiple tours in combat zones, where he honed his skills as a strategist and tactician. He was decorated with several awards, including the Bronze Star and the Purple Heart. They met at a charity event in Manhattan, and Sarah was immediately drawn to Hawk's charisma and sense of purpose. Despite the danger and uncertainty of his job, Sarah felt a deep connection to Hawk, and they quickly fell in love. As Hawk deployed to various hotspots around the world, Sarah supported him from afar, visiting him whenever possible. She was proud of his service and admired his bravery. In 2018, Hawk proposed to Sarah during a surprise visit to her family's ranch in Texas. They married in a beautiful ceremony, surrounded by friends and family. Sarah's marriage to Hawk was, by all appearances, perfect. They were the picture of happiness, always smiling and holding hands in public. Hawk was a devoted husband, always making time for Sarah despite his demanding schedule as a Marine officer. Sarah, in turn, was a supportive and loving wife, always there to encourage and comfort Hawk whenever he needed it. Together, they were a force for good in their community. Sarah volunteered at the local animal shelter, helping care for stray animals and organizing fundraising events. She also participated in Hawk's charity work, supporting veterans organizations and helping to raise awareness for military families. Sarah's contributions to the community didn't go unnoticed. She was praised by her neighbors and friends for her kindness, generosity, and dedication. She and Hawk were the golden couple, the ones everyone looked up to as a model of marital bliss. But beneath the surface, Sarah felt a growing sense of discontent. She loved Hawk, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. She felt like she was just going through the motions, playing the role of perfect wife and community volunteer without any real sense of purpose or fulfillment. But what the world didn't know was that Sarah had a dark secret. Behind the facade of her perfect marriage and idyllic life, Sarah harbored a desire that she dare not speak aloud. She was attracted to women. For years, Sarah had suppressed her feelings, convinced that they were wrong, and that she needed to conform to societal norms. She had grown up in a conservative community, where same-sex relationships were frowned upon, and she had internalized those beliefs. But as she grew older, she couldn't shake off the longing. She began to feel like she was living a lie, like she was trapped in a life that wasn't hers. So she started to act on her desires, secretly meeting women and engaging in clandestine affairs. She was always careful, always looking over her shoulder, always making sure that no one was watching. She used pseudonyms, fake profiles, and secret meetings to keep her true self hidden. Hawk, oblivious to his wife's secret life, continued to adore and trust her. He had no idea that the woman he loved was leading a double life, one that could potentially destroy their marriage and reputation. He thought she was happy, content with their life together. And in many ways, Sarah was. She loved Hawk, but she couldn't help how she felt. Sarah's affairs were always discreet, always hidden from prying eyes. She was careful to cover her tracks, to ensure that her secrets remained safe. But the weight of her deception was crushing her, threatening to expose her at any moment. She felt like she was living on borrowed time, like it was only a matter of time before her secrets came to light. And then she met Emily, the wife of Pastor Theo. Emily was beautiful, charming, and kind, with a quick smile and a sharp wit. Sarah was immediately drawn to her, and as they spent more time together, she found herself falling deeply in love. But their love was forbidden, a secret that could never be revealed. Sarah and Emily first met at a church function in the spring of 2022. Sarah, attending the service with her husband Hawk, was immediately struck by Emily's beauty and poise as she led the congregation in prayer. Emily, the pastor's wife, was radiant as she spoke about faith and love. Their eyes met, and Sarah felt a spark of attraction she couldn't ignore. After the service, they exchanged pleasantries, and Sarah found herself drawn to Emily's warmth and kindness. They started running into each other at church events, and Sarah would find excuses to linger, just to be near Emily. As they spent more time together, their friendship blossomed into something more. They started meeting for coffee, then lunch, and eventually long walks in the park. Sarah was drawn to Emily's intelligence, passion, and compassion. Emily, too, felt a connection she couldn't explain. As they spent more time together, their friendship deepened, and they found themselves lost in conversation, sharing their hopes and dreams. They'd steal glances at each other during church services, their hearts racing with excitement. Their love affair flourished, despite the danger and secrecy. They'd send each other love letters, hidden in hymnals and secret messages. They'd steal moments together, always looking over their shoulders, knowing that their love was forbidden. For the first time in her life, Sarah felt like she was living her truth. She was in love with a woman, and she couldn't deny it anymore. Emily felt the same, and together they knew they'd face whatever came next, as long as they had each other. Pastor Theo had always trusted his wife, Emily, implicitly. However, over the past few weeks, he had begun to notice a change in her behavior. She was receiving mysterious phone calls, often stepping away to answer them in private. She was also spending more time away from home, claiming to be visiting friends or running errands. At first, Pastor Theo brushed off his concerns, thinking Emily was just going through a phase. But as the days went by, her secretive behavior continued. He started to notice that she was dressing more provocatively, wearing makeup and perfume when she left the house. One evening, Pastor Theo followed Emily, curious about her destination. He trailed behind her, watching as she met a woman at a coffee shop. They hugged, and Emily handed the woman a small package. Pastor Theo's mind raced with possibilities, wondering if his wife was involved in something illicit. As the days passed, Pastor Theo's suspicions grew. He began to wonder if Emily was having an affair, if the mysterious phone calls and secret meetings were evidence of a relationship with another man. He felt a mix of emotions: anger, hurt, and betrayal. Despite his concerns, Pastor Theo didn't confront Emily directly. Instead, he started to distance himself from her, throwing himself into his work at the church. But the tension between them grew, and their relationship began to fray. Unbeknownst to Pastor Theo, Emily's actions were not what they seemed. Yes, she was hiding a secret, but it wasn't what he had in mind. It was one that would put her and those around her in grave danger. Pastor Theo's suspicions led him to snoop through Emily's phone, searching for evidence of an affair. He scrolled through her texts, his heart racing with anticipation. That's when he saw it. A conversation with Sarah, a woman he knew from his church. Sarah was an active member, always volunteering and participating in church events. Pastor Theo had considered her a friend, and now he felt betrayed. He continued reading the texts, his eyes widening in shock. The messages were explicit, detailing a romantic relationship between Emily and Sarah. Pastor Theo couldn't believe what he was reading. His wife, the woman he had trusted and loved, was having an affair with another woman. He felt a mix of emotions: anger, hurt, and confusion. How could Emily do this? How could Sarah, a member of his church, betray him like this? Pastor Theo's mind raced with questions, but he couldn't shake off the feeling of betrayal. He continued reading the texts, learning more about the affair. Emily and Sarah had been seeing each other for months, sneaking around to avoid detection. They had even talked about leaving their spouses and starting a new life together. Pastor Theo felt like his world was crumbling around him. He didn't know what to do or who to turn to. He was torn between his duty as a pastor and his personal feelings of betrayal. His anger and hurt consumed him, leading him to make a fateful decision. He decided to confront Sarah at her home, determined to put an end to the affair and protect his marriage. On the afternoon of September 15th, around 1 p.m., Pastor Theo arrived at the Wilsons' residence, his heart racing with anticipation. He rang the doorbell, and Sarah answered, looking unsuspecting. Sarah had even offered him some sliced fruits, with a fork placed beside it, in a tray, to make him feel comfortable. The conversation started calmly, but quickly escalated into a heated argument. Pastor Theo demanded that Sarah leave his wife alone. He claimed that she was the servant of the devil who had come to destroy his church, but she refused, standing her ground. The argument reached a boiling point, and Pastor Theo's anger got the better of him. In a fit of rage, he grabbed the fork in the tray and stabbed her in the stomach. Sarah crumpled to the floor, in shock with blood slowly dripping from her, and she slowly went unconscious. Pastor Theo was shocked, realizing what he had done. He tried to revive her, but it was too late. He realized she was not breathing and assumed her dead. Panic set in as he tried to process what had happened. But as he looked around the room, he knew he couldn't erase the evidence of his crime. He had made a terrible mistake, one that would haunt him forever. He left in a hurry, but composed himself when he got outside to avoid suspicion. That evening, Hawk walked through the front door of his house, expecting a warm welcome from his wife, Sarah. But as he entered the foyer, he was met with an eerie silence. He dropped his keys on the console table and made his way to the kitchen, thinking maybe she was busy cooking dinner. But the kitchen was empty, and the house felt still. He walked through the living room, noticing that the TV was off, and the room was messy. That was unlike Sarah, who always kept a tidy home. He walked around. He almost slipped as he stepped on a liquid coming from behind the couch, and as he reached behind it, he froze, and as he was met with the sight that made his blood run cold. Sarah lay on the floor, a pool of blood spreading from her stomach, her face in a surprised expression. Hawk's world came crashing down around him as he stood there, frozen in horror. He approached Sarah's body, feeling for a pulse, but there was none. He shook her gently, but she didn't respond. The room was in disarray, with signs of a struggle. Hawk's mind struggled to comprehend the scene before him. His instincts kicked in, and he quickly pulled out his phone and dialed 911. He reported the incident, and the operator assured him that help was on the way. Within minutes, Hawk heard the distant sound of sirens. The police and ambulance were on their way, He stood frozen in the bedroom, his eyes fixed on Sarah's lifeless body. 20 minutes later, the quiet neighborhood was transformed into a bustling crime scene. Police vehicles, ambulances, and forensic vans filled the compound. Officers in uniform and plain clothes swarmed the area, securing the perimeter and beginning their investigation. Detective James, a seasoned homicide investigator, took charge of the scene. He began surveying the area, taking note of every detail. The forensic team started processing the crime scene, collecting evidence, and documenting every aspect. Fingerprint experts dusted surfaces, while DNA specialists collected samples. Photographers captured every angle of the room, and videographers recorded the scene. The ambulance crew waited patiently to transport Sarah's body to the morgue for an autopsy. Hawk was ushered into the living room, where he was asked to wait. Detective James and his team began canvassing the neighborhood, searching for any potential witnesses or surveillance footage. They knocked on doors, asking residents if they had seen or heard anything suspicious on the day of the murder. The detectives also sought out CCTV footage from nearby homes and businesses, hoping to catch a glimpse of the perpetrator. They spent hours reviewing the footage, but so far, nothing seemed to show any suspicious activity. As they went door to door, the neighbors seemed reluctant to get involved. Some claimed they hadn't seen or heard anything, while others simply shut their doors, not wanting to engage with the detectives. Mrs. Patty, one of their neighbors, peeked through her curtains, eyeing the detectives warily before quickly closing her door. Mr. Sean, a man in his late 50s, seemed more willing to chat, but claimed he hadn't noticed anything unusual, except for the fact that he had seen a man and a woman visiting the Wilsons that afternoon. Finally, someone gave him a lead. He was persistent, knowing that someone might have seen something crucial. He made a mental note to revisit some of the neighbors, hoping to catch them in a more receptive mood. The team encountered a mix of reactions, from curiosity to hostility, but they continued their search for any lead, no matter how small. The next day, Detective James and his team arrived at Wilson's residence to conduct a formal interview. As they sat him down, Hawk's mind was still reeling from the events of the previous day. Detective James and his team asked Hawk to provide a detailed account of his movements on the day of the murder. Hawk explained his morning run, his visit to the gym, and his lunch meeting with a client. The detectives verified his alibi, confirming that he was indeed at the gym and the restaurant at the times he claimed. Next, they showed Hawk the CCTV footage they had obtained from the neighborhood cameras. The footage revealed two individuals visiting the Hawkins residence at different times during the day. Hawk's eyes widened as he recognized the two visitors, Pastor Theo and Emily, the pastor's wife. Detective James and his team summoned Emily for questioning, as the CCTV footage showed her visiting the Hawkins residence on the day of the murder. Emily arrived at the police station. She looked anxious, fidgeting with her hands as she waited to be called in for questioning. The detectives asked Emily to explain her visits to the Hawkins residence. She hesitated, choosing her words carefully, explaining that she had gone to see Sarah to discuss personal issues. She claimed that she had happened to find the door unlocked, and since nobody responded to her knocks, she entered but found her dead. She further added that she didn't inform the police because her reputation in the church would be blemished if her members find out that she was a suspect in a crime. The detectives pressed Emily for more information, asking about her relationship with Sarah, and if she knew her husband had come earlier before her to see the victim. Emily tensed, and she told them she was just friends with Sarah, but denied knowing if her husband had been there before her. As the interview concluded, Detective James couldn't shake off the feeling that Emily was not telling the whole truth. He made a mental note to investigate her alibi further and to look into her relationship with Sarah. The detectives also decided to bring Pastor Theo in for questioning, as his presence in Wilson's residence raised suspicions since he was the first visitor. He arrived at the police station, looking nervous and agitated. As the detectives began to question him, Pastor Theo's demeanor changed from confident to fearful. He started to sweat, and his voice trembled. The detectives sensed that he was hiding something and pressed him for the truth. In a surprising turn of events, Pastor Theo cracked under the pressure and confessed to killing Sarah. He told the detectives that he had discovered his wife's affair with Sarah and had confronted her about it. The argument had escalated, and in a fit of rage, he had grabbed the fork he had used for the fruit Sarah offered him and struck her in the stomach. The detectives were stunned by the sudden confession. They asked Pastor Theo to explain the events leading up to the murder, and he provided a detailed account of his discovery of the affair, his confrontation with Sarah, and the subsequent events. Pastor Theo was detained at the police station, his confession still echoing in the minds of the detectives. He was placed in a holding cell, awaiting further questioning and formal charges. After Pastor Theo's arrest, Emily's behavior became increasingly erratic. She had initially seemed shocked and distraught by her husband's confession, but as the reality of the situation set in, she became more calculating and determined. Emily quickly assembled a team of high-powered lawyers to defend her husband and work on getting him released on bail. She was adamant that Pastor Theo was innocent, despite his confession, and that he was being framed for the crime. As the lawyers worked on the bail application, Emily's behavior became more and more agitated. She would often appear at the police station, demanding to see her husband and protesting his innocence. She would also make frequent phone calls to the detectives, trying to persuade them to drop the charges against Pastor Theo. Despite her efforts, the detectives remained resolute in their investigation. They had evidence linking Pastor Theo to the crime, and they were determined to see justice served. On the afternoon of September 18th, the autopsy results arrived at the police station. The report revealed that Sarah's cause of death was strangulation, not from the wound caused by the stab because the weapon was not long enough to make a fatal blow, but that wasn't the only shocking detail. They found a DNA sample on the neck of the victim. The detectives were stunned by the new information, and their focus shifted to finding out who had inflicted the additional injuries and moved the body. That's when they received the DNA results from the crime scene. The DNA sample found on Sarah's body matched Emily's DNA, which was already on file from a previous incident. The detectives were shocked by the revelation. Emily, who had seemed so shaken by the events, was now a prime suspect. They realized that Pastor Theo's confession might have been just a small part of the story, and that Emily's involvement might have been more significant than they initially thought. The police decided to summon Emily again, this time taking a different approach to force out a confession. They had previously been gentle and accommodating, but now they would use a more assertive and confrontational tactic. Detective James and his team prepared for the interrogation, gathering all the evidence they had collected so far. They would present it to Emily in a way that would make it impossible for her to deny her involvement. As Emily arrived at the police station, she was met with a stern expression by Detective James. He led her to the interrogation room, where the atmosphere was tense and formal. The detectives began to present their evidence piece by piece, showing Emily the inconsistencies in her alibi and the DNA evidence that linked her to the crime scene. They also showed her the illicit texts where she had been communicating with Sarah, revealing a deeper connection between the two of them. They had found it on Pastor Theo's phone, who had snapped it to confront Sarah as evidence. The detective's approach was calculated to make Emily feel cornered and trapped, with no escape from the truth. They would give her no room to maneuver or deny her involvement. As the interrogation progressed, Emily's demeanor changed from confident to nervous, her eyes darting around the room as she searched for an escape. The detectives sensed that she was on the verge of cracking, and they pressed on, determined to extract a confession from her. As the detectives continued to press Emily, she suddenly broke down in tears, her composure shattered. She buried her face in her hands, sobbing uncontrollably. On the day of the murder, several minutes after Pastor Theo was gone, Emily arrived at the residence. She parked her car away from sight. She knocked on the door, but no response. Her facial expression showed that she must have come for a fight. She pushed the door open and was taken aback by the sight she saw. Sarah was bleeding profusely, but still conscious because she was still trying to move. One part of instincts screamed at her to help her, to call the police and save her, but her other part decided against it. Whoever had attacked her had failed to finish her up, and she would gladly do it. She couldn't deny the fact that her time with Sarah had been good, and she had been satisfied with the affection they both received in their affair. But Sarah had crossed the line, and that led to the decline of their relationship. When she had wanted to end her affair with Sarah because of the guilt of having an affair outside their marriage with a fellow woman, Sarah had declined and said they must keep their affair going. Emily had tried to make Sarah understand that exposing their secrets could damage the reputation she had built over the years and harm her husband's position in the church. However, she was met with Sarah's adamant refusal to listen. It had been getting to her, and Sarah had been texting her non-stop for them to see. What worsened it all was the fact that she started blackmailing her with her nude photos and kept threatening to post it on social media and her husband's church website if she stopped coming. That was what led her right to her home, only to find her in her predicament. She didn't think it twice before strangling her, making sure she breathed her last before scurrying away from the scene. The detectives listened in stunned silence as Emily's confession poured out, her tears and sobs filling the room. They had suspected Emily's involvement, but the motive had been unclear until now. As Emily's confession came to an end, the detectives knew they had solved the case. Pastor Theo was charged with assault for his role in the events leading up to Sarah's murder. He would face justice for his actions, but his sentence would be significantly lighter than Emily's. Emily's trial began on September 30th, 2023, and the evidence against her was overwhelming. The prosecution presented a clear and compelling case, and the jury delivered a guilty verdict. Emily was sentenced to death for the murder of Sarah Hawkins. Hawk was devastated by the revelation of his wife's secret life. He struggled to come to terms with the fact that he had never known the true nature of his wife. He felt betrayed and deceived, and his world was shattered by the truth. The community was shocked and saddened by the events that had unfolded. Sarah's murder had sent shockwaves through the small town, and the revelation of Emily's involvement had left everyone reeling. The town would never be the same again, and the memory of Sarah's tragic death would linger for years to come. The local media covered the story extensively, and the community was thrust into the national spotlight. The case raised questions about the secrets that can hide behind closed doors and the devastating consequences of unchecked emotions. In the end, the community was left to pick up the pieces and try to heal. They came together to support one another and to find a way forward, but the memory of Sarah's tragic death would never be forgotten. Do you think Emily should have gotten a lighter sentence due to the fact that she was being blackmailed and had gotten a chance to escape from it? We hope you enjoyed this true crime story as much as we did enjoy making this video. Subscribe to the channel to see more crime stories, and click here to see another thrilling story about true crime. Enjoy.